Thank you so much, Peter. And it was serendipitous that we met on February and we got a chance to share our stories with you, and great to be here. So, as Peter said, that I wanted to tell you a story that you haven't likely heard of, of basically how an oil executive who ended up creating one of the largest development organizations in the world. A story of how one man's ambition and entrepreneurship and a passion for changing the world can make impossible changes happen. That organization, BRAC, which I'm the CEO of, I started in tiny Bangladesh. It's funny that how we didn't really collaborate on the slides, but a lot of our slides are very similar in many ways. It started in Bangladesh and has now reached over 145 million people across Asia and Africa, and more than 8 times the population of Netherlands in many ways. Just to give you some examples of the work that we have done, it has educated over 15 million children, lends about $7 billion annually in microloans, and has supported almost 14 million families to lift themselves out of ultra poverty. And has pioneered what is arguably now the most effective model of graduating ultra poors out of ultra poverty. And at the same time, as Peter mentioned, it runs some of the largest social enterprises in the world as well. So how did it all start? Started with an unlikely place and with an unlikely protagonist. The executive's name was Fazle Hassan Abed. He grew up in an aristocratic family and was trained as an accountant, had a very sharp business mind. But at the same time, if he hadn't gone on to build BRAC, he probably would have built on some of the biggest businesses in the corporate world. But his turning point in life came when this deadliest tropical cyclone happened in Bangladesh in 1970. Watching dead bodies float ashore, he realized that there was no point living a kind of life that was isolated and insulated from other people's lives and misery. So what he started was initially just a small relief effort, basic foods and medicine and basic supplies. And then the War of Bangladesh started in 1971. And 10 million refugees returned from India to Bangladesh with no future, staring at the abyss. So Abed decided to live his comfortable life and place himself in rural Bangladesh, and which at that time was the second poorest country in the world. And the realization he had, like watching poverty from up close and personal, was that poverty was just not a poverty of income. There's power imbalances, there's social structures, lack of access to basic services like education, healthcare, financial services, keep people poor for generations. And people must organize themselves if they want power. And all of these realizations led him to focus on that BRAC cannot be a charity where people are passive recipients of aid. He made sure that the people who are receiving, the people living in poverty are active participants in the change process. So that he constantly asked that question that in resource-constrained countries like Bangladesh, how can we come up with frugal models that are scalable, using whatever we have in the local community to basically make those services available to people. And I think that was basically the game changer that differentiated BRAC from other organizations. Essentially, solutions flowed from all directions. We had, for example, one-room schools were made where designed within the communities. The women were trained as teachers, and thousands of out-of-school children were getting educated. Thousands of healthcare workers were trained in communities and taught mothers about child health and immunization that led to maternal mortality and child mortality reduced by dramatic levels. Millions of women got organized to get access to financial services and assert their claim in the society. So these are just a few of the things that I mentioned, but there are many more other things that BRAC did. But the USP of all of these solutions was people were at the core of all of these initiatives. We did not have resources or a lot of infrastructure, but what we had was untapped capability, human capability, which when put to good use, where they turned into a social force for social good. But that forces also had its limit, because while BRAC's social programs were building the long-term foundation for changes, at the same time, immediate livelihood and good jobs were very, very urgent as well. I mean, for example, farmers who bought cows with the microloans that they get, thinking that they're going to generate income by selling the milk, they didn't have access to markets. So many people in the same community bought cows that the milks could not be sold. We had women who were making crafts at home who did not have places to sell for better prices, and even if they were selling them, they were not getting the money on time to sustain themselves. Farmers did not have access to better quality seeds to improve the yield of the crops. And many of the new kinds of activities that the poor people were engaging in, like fisheries, poultries, had a lot of work to do to create that sector, and they needed access to new markets. But private capital did not flow here because there was not enough money to be made. The margins were so poor, and there were so many things that needed to be done. So essentially, market and business were failing the poor. So that's when BRAC decided that it had to put on the business hat as well. And BRAC needed to make the market work for the poor. So BRAC Dairy started, organizing farmers and investing in building a cold chain to sell their milk in urban areas. We had Arong, a differently branded social enterprise that was created as sales centers in urban areas to sell the crafts for these rural women, and began organizing the artisans and grow the demand for local crafts by creating an aspirational brand. BRAC Seeds and Fisheries became household names because of their quality and for reputation for good quality. And many different streams of BRAC's works started then reinforcing each other. So where we are now, fast forward 53 years, we now operate some of the largest development programs, starting from microfinance to education to livelihood across 14 countries in Asia and Africa. We, on the other hand, some of the world's largest social enterprises, many of them are market leaders in their sectors in Bangladesh, which are running as well. We have some large investments, including 2 commercial banks, tech companies, as well as BRAC University. Now, what we call this constellation of organization that forms the BRAC solution ecosystem. So I think one thing is important to understand, that there is not a business model for every single social problems. You cannot, social development programs like the ultra-poor graduation that I mentioned will always rely on grants. This homegrown model that I was mentioning equips people living on less than $25 a day with an asset, and then support to cover basic needs and coaching to lift themselves out of poverty over a 2-year investment period. This approach has graduated now 14 million people and is being tried on by other organizations, governments in 46 different countries now, in 100 different contexts. And research showed that by London School of Economics that showed that even after 7 years, they don't regress back, they go from strength to strength. It's like a light bulb gets switched on. In terms of social enterprises, if you look at, just to give one example, Arong, I was telling you, the crafts, the lifestyle brand, that has now worked with 75,000 artisans. 85% of them are women. It has not only provided stable livelihoods and social services, but also at the same time generated a huge demand for Bangladeshi crafts. Arong now generates over $150 million in revenue. Annuals, and 50% of the surplus goes to pay for the social development programs like the ultra-poor graduation, and 50% goes to reinvest in the enterprise itself. So even though all of these 11 enterprises that we have business growth in mind and compete with private sector, the social compass continues to blend in to guide their each individual decisions. Same ethos is applied no matter how large or small. We have as small as a 100-woman BRAC recycled handmade enterprise to Bikash, a mobile financial service provider which connects almost 80 million registered users right now, which has become Bangladesh's first unicorn now. So what does it all mean now? So I think what was evident from the previous three presentations is that we often think of doing good and doing business as mutually exclusive. I think we think organizations should only and could only do good or do good business, right? Business is generally done by corporations, while doing good outsourced to charities. There's no doubt that we can do it this way, but we need to start, given the state of the world that we are in, we need to start to think a bit differently, think much bigger, because we don't really have any choice. If you look at the world we live in right now, I think it is at a breaking point. And in the time I've been talking, almost 1,300 people have been forced out of their homes because of climate change. And that's just one example. Peter talked about extreme poverty. 700 million people, almost 10% of the global population, are now living on less than $2.15. Take pollution, and bird on one Australia's remote island was just found with 900 pieces of plastic in its stomach. So the other thing that is unprecedented is also the extreme wealth, right? And the richest 1% have more wealth than bottom 95% of the world's population put together. So corporations are increasingly richer than many countries. So we do have the resources to fight these inequalities, but it's just the will is missing, and perhaps the coalition is missing. So we need to think and act very differently going forward if we are to save this planet. And so if we can take away a few kind of lessons from BRAC's solution ecosystem, I would say these three I would put. I think we need to really aim for bigger goals. Honestly, I think one of the things that often constrains a lot of charities is the mindset. Our founder used to say, small is beautiful, but large is necessary. So I think we think too much about beautiful, but not enough in terms of what real impact is. We need scale for big impacts. So we need to start with impossible vision, whether it's changing a country or ending poverty or eradicating a disease. Second is that don't shy away from new territories, right? I think big problems are extremely complex. And the only way to solve them is to, of course, keep innovating, but bring the people together, regardless of where they're from, whether it's non-profit, for-profit. We make boundaries. Bring in the coalitions that you need to put together. And that's why this movement is going to be so powerful, I think, going forward. And the last point is that sustainable, real changes is not short-term business, right? It has to be long-term. So have patience. It will take policy change. It will take activism. It will take good old-fashioned development work and good businesses to come together. So I think everyone in this room has, I feel like, what it makes to make this change. And the world needs you to apply these skill sets and to the massive challenges that we are facing. So when you leave this room today, I would encourage you not just that you outsource the doing good to other charities. Apply yourself personally. I think that's so important. Your skill set is so important. I still believe that this will be the generation which will solve some of the biggest challenges of the world because they are more connected than ever, right? If entrepreneurship meets ambition, and the passion for change is there, anything can happen. And as we say in BRAC, there is always a way.